Focusing on yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. It means putting your energy into your goals, your health, your peace, and your progress. It means waking up and asking, what do I need to do today to become a better version of me? Not what will they think, or what are they doing. There comes a moment in personal growth when you stop chasing approval from others. In the past, maybe every decision you made, what you wore, what you said, even what you posted online was influenced by what others might think. That's natural in a world where judgment is constant and opinions are loud. But when you start focusing on yourself, you begin to feel the weight of that need lift. You start asking yourself, do I want this? Or do I just want others to like me for it? And you evolve. You realize that validation from others is temporary and unpredictable. One moment they'll applaud you, the next they'll question your worth. That kind of roller coaster drains your energy and creates confusion. Instead, self-medication becomes your anchor. You learn to check in with yourself first. If your choice aligns with your values, your peace, and your growth, that becomes enough. You don't wait for applause because inner confidence doesn't need an audience. This shift is liberating, but it can also feel lonely at first. When you're used to measuring success through likes, compliments, or recognition, silence can be uncomfortable. But in that silence, you begin to build something far more powerful: self-respect. You start to understand that your worth isn't dependent on how many people agree with you or praise your path. You start performing and start living authentically. Without the constant chase for approval, your mind becomes clearer. You're no longer pulled in different directions trying to please everyone. You're not afraid to say no, to walk away, or to take risks that others might not understand. You learn that it's better to be misunderstood while staying true to yourself than to be liked for wearing a mask. Decisions become easier when you only need your own yes to move forward. And this freedom creates space for growth. You no longer waste time doubting your every step or adjusting yourself for comfort's sake. You use that energy to invest in your own journey, your skills, your goals, your healing. The opinions of others might still exist, but they don't control you anymore. You observe them, maybe even learn from them, but they no longer determine who you are or what you're capable of becoming. As you begin to focus on yourself, your attention shifts from the lives of others to the quality of your own. Where once you might have spent time scrolling through social media, measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel, now you pause and ask deeper questions. What am I building? What do I need to work on? You begin to care less about who's doing what and more about how you're doing, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Comparison, once a constant habit, starts to lose its grip on you. You realize that no two paths are the same, and trying to compete with someone else's timing only distracts you from your own progress. When you're consumed with what others are achieving, you neglect the small wins happening in your own world. But when you turn inward and measure yourself only against who you were yesterday, growth becomes visible. It becomes personal, and most importantly, it becomes sustainable. Alongside comparison, gossip starts to feel empty. The conversations that used to excite you, dissecting someone's choices, judging their flaws, begin to sound meaningless. You notice how gossip drains the room of positivity and fills it with judgment. Instead of talking about people, you want to talk about ideas, goals, healing, and purpose. You crave deeper conversations that fuel your development, not distractions that keep you stuck. That shift often distances you from certain circles. When you choose growth, not everyone will follow. Some people bond over gossip because it's easy. It doesn't require vulnerability or effort. But self-growth requires both. It demands you look at your own flaws instead of pointing at someone else's. It pushes you to be accountable, to learn, and to evolve even when it's uncomfortable. That kind of mindset isn't always popular, but it's powerful. With less time wasted on others' business, you gain more time for yourself. You read more, reflect more, and act more intentionally. Instead of watching others live, you begin to live with direction. Your habits change. You might start journaling instead of complaining, meditating instead of comparing, and setting goals instead of gossiping. These small choices slowly shape your mindset and eventually your reality. You begin to understand that growth is quiet and deeply personal. It doesn't need to be broadcasted, and it certainly doesn't need to be compared. The more you commit to your own lane, the less interested you are in what others are doing wrong. You become focused not on being better than others, but on becoming better than who you used to be. As you begin focusing on yourself, one of the first things you notice is your relationship with words begins to shift. You no longer feel the need to explain everything to everyone. You realize that not every thought deserves to be spoken, and not every opinion needs to be shared. Silence becomes a tool, not a weakness. You start to conserve your voice for moments that truly matter, for conversations that add clarity or build meaning, not those that stir chaos or demand validation. You also begin to think before you respond. Where once you might have reacted emotionally or impulsively, now you pause. That pause becomes powerful. It gives you control over your emotions and allows you to respond with intention. You understand that your energy is precious, and every time you speak you are spending it, so instead of wasting words in arguments, gossip, or complaints, you learn to protect your peace by choosing when, and whether, to speak at all. People may start to notice a difference in you. You don't jump into every debate, you don't explain yourself repeatedly, and you don't overshare your plans. You let your actions speak for you. Some might misinterpret your silence as distance or arrogance, but the truth is far from that. It's discipline. It's knowing that over-explaining your life often leads to overexposing your soul to people who aren't ready to receive it with care. Your conversations begin to change in depth and tone. You find yourself seeking meaning over noise, substance over small talk. You're no longer interested in proving a point just to feel right. Instead, you value understanding, growth, and truth, even if that means saying less. You learn that peace doesn't always come from having the last word, but sometimes from saying nothing at all. That restraint becomes your strength. This inner shift also affects the way you handle conflict. Where before you might have fought to defend your side, now you choose silence as a boundary. Not every confrontation needs a comeback. Not every provocation deserves your energy. You start to recognize which battles are worth it and which ones are distractions in disguise. Silence becomes your armor, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know when peace is more valuable than pride. As your words become more intentional, your energy follows. You become mindful of where it flows, who you talk to, what you talk about, and how often you engage. These things begin to matter more. You protect your focus like it's sacred, because now you understand that not everyone deserves access to your time or your thoughts, and the more you pull your energy back from meaningless places, the more powerful it becomes in meaningful ones. You also stop broadcasting your plans. You no longer feel the urge to tell the world what you're working on. There's something deeply powerful in moving in silence. It keeps you grounded, free from outside pressure, and focused on execution rather than expectation. You learn that most progress is made in quiet moments of discipline, not in loud declarations. The less you announce, the more you achieve without noise or distraction. Eventually, even your presence begins to carry weight without you having to say much. People start to notice your calm, your focus, your silence, and they respect it. You don't speak to be heard anymore. You speak to be understood, and only when necessary. You become someone who chooses words like currency, spent carefully, with awareness of their value and effect. As you begin to truly focus on yourself, one of the first and most noticeable shifts is in your relationships. People who once felt close start to drift away, not always with conflict, but often with silence. The conversations feel different. the energy feels off, and it's not because you've become cold, it's because you've become intentional. You're no longer entertaining surface-level connections or forcing relationships that don't align with who. This shrinking of your circle can feel uncomfortable. You may question yourself, wondering if you're pushing people away or being too distant, but over time you realize it's not rejection, it's refinement. You're no longer available in the same way for people who only wanted the old version of you. When you stop pleasing others and start prioritizing your inner peace, some people naturally fall away because they were attached to your distractions, not your growth. You also start recognizing the difference between genuine connection and emotional convenience. Some people liked you better when you were struggling because it made them feel needed or superior. But once you begin healing, growing, and setting boundaries, those same people may grow quiet or uncomfortable around you. They weren't rooted in support. They were rooted in control, drama, or dependency. And when you walk away from that, you're choosing peace over familiarity. Your standards for connection begin to rise. You want conversations that uplift you, not drain you. You want friendships where you can be both vulnerable and empowered, not judged, silenced, or guilt-tripped. You no longer settle for being half understood or fully used. This naturally reduces the number of people you keep close, but it increases the quality of every interaction you allow into your space. In the process, solitude becomes a sanctuary rather than a punishment. You find joy in being alone because it no longer feels empty. It feels clean, quiet, and honest. You stop seeking crowds to avoid your thoughts and start seeking stillness to hear them clearly. That stillness becomes the space where you reflect, recharge, and realign. It's in that quiet that you realize how heavy some of those old relationships were, even if they were wrapped in laughter or history. You no longer chase people who left, or beg for attention from those who've gone silent. You understand that people who want to be in your life will meet you with effort, honesty, and consistency. You stop overextending yourself just to maintain connections. If someone requires you to shrink your light, your truth, or your standards to keep them around, they were never truly with you to begin with. As your peace grows, your energy becomes more focused. You invest it into your health, your purpose, your learning. You begin noticing that you're less reactive and more grounded. You're not constantly exhausted by social obligations or drained by trying to fix broken dynamics. Instead, you have space for reflection, for creativity, for meaningful progress. And you realize that this space used to be filled with noise and chaos that brought little to no value to your life. You become more discerning with your time. Just because someone is familiar doesn't mean they're healthy for you. Just because you shared a past doesn't mean you owe them a future. You learn to release people with grace instead of guilt. You stop explaining your growth to those who never intended to understand it. Some connections were only meant to teach you something, not to travel with you forever. This transformation can make you seem distant or changed to others, and they may say you've become cold or self-centered, but you're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. Clear about what deserves your energy. Clear about what brings you peace. Clear about what love, support, and respect actually look like. And that clarity naturally filters out what doesn't belong. Your circle may be smaller now, but it feels lighter. The few people who remain don't require you to wear a mask. You don't need to impress them, entertain them, or fix yourself to be accepted. They see you, they respect your space, and they support your evolution. These are the people who bring calm, not chaos, and though they may be few, their presence feels more genuine than the crowd you once tried so hard to keep close. There's a quiet shift that happens when you begin to truly focus on yourself. You stop fearing time alone. What once felt like emptiness now feels like presence. You no longer see solitude as a sign that something is missing, but as a sign that something meaningful is being built inside of you. You no longer look outward to fill the silence. Instead, you learn how to sit with it and listen to what it reveals. In solitude, you begin to meet parts of yourself you previously ignored or buried beneath noise. You start to unpack old wounds, question long-held beliefs, and notice the patterns that were driving your life unconsciously. Without the distractions of constant conversation or social validation, you finally have the space to examine your truth. And while this can be uncomfortable at first, it becomes deeply freeing with time. As you get more comfortable being alone, your dependency on external stimulation begins to dissolve. You don't need a text, a call, or a plan to feel valuable. You don't feel lost when plans fall through or when weekends are quiet. You feel grounded. Solitude becomes a tool for self-regulation, where you reset your mind and emotions. It becomes a space where you gain clarity and regain control over your thoughts instead of being pulled by everyone else's energy. This shift also transforms the way you engage with others. You're no longer social out of habit or fear of missing out. You choose connection with intention. Because you're not afraid of being alone, you're no longer desperate to be surrounded. This keeps you from clinging to shallow relationships or saying yes to situations that don't align with your peace. You become a person who connects from wholeness, not from loneliness. Your creativity often blossoms in solitude. With no one to interrupt your flow or influence your thoughts, your ideas begin to deepen. You start journaling, planning, building, reflecting. You discover interests that had been buried under other people's expectations. You make room for passions that had been postponed by busyness. The quiet creates space for your authentic voice to surface, and with it new levels of inspiration. In solitude, you begin to feel your intuition more clearly. Without everyone else's opinions clouding your judgment, you can finally hear what your gut is telling you. You start making decisions based on your own values and timing, not peer pressure or social trends. Your inner voice becomes louder than the noise of the world, and you start to trust it. This trust forms the foundation of stronger self-confidence and independence. Emotional regulation also improves with time spent alone. You begin to recognize your triggers, your coping mechanisms, and your thought cycles. Without needing to perform or maintain an image, you can drop the facade and simply be real with yourself. You cry without guilt. You laugh without reason. You process emotions in private so they don't control you in public. This emotional honesty strengthens your resilience and maturity. Even your environment starts to reflect your inner peace. You become more intentional about your space. You declutter, simplify, and create a physical atmosphere that mirrors your internal calm. Whether it's through organizing your home, setting up a quiet corner to read, or simply enjoying your morning in stillness, you find value in moments that are undisturbed and undiluted by constant interaction. People might not understand this new comfort you have with solitude. They may interpret your quietness as isolation or your distance as detachment, but you know the truth. You're not running from people, you're running toward yourself. You're not closing off from the world, you're opening up to yourself in ways you never could when you were constantly surrounded or distracted. You start to value your own company not just as enough, but as essential. What once felt like loneliness now feels like alignment. You no longer associate being alone with being unloved. You understand that presence doesn't always need to be shared to be powerful. Some of your deepest healing, clearest realizations, and boldest ideas will be born in the quiet corners of your life, where no one is watching and no one is cheering, just you, choosing yourself every single time.